Good morning, boys, and welcome back to our lessons on the Rebbe's Seder. Today we're going to cover steps 11 to 13. Shulchan Orech, the meal, Tzafun, eating the afikoman, and Beirach, which is benching. Our minhag is to begin the meal by dipping the beitza, the hard-boiled egg, into salt water. But just before the Rebbe ate the egg, he did one more thing. By Maitzi matzah, he hadn't eaten any of the matzah with salt. Now, the Rebbe poured some salt into his matzah case, took a piece of matzah, and rubbed it 3 times in salt, and then ate it. Immediately afterwards, the Rebbe went on to eat the egg. Like many things during the Seder, the Rebbe had a perfect and specific way of peeling the egg. Many Hasidim remember the Rebbe would bang the egg on the table, roll it with his hands, and somehow the egg would literally part. One half would come off in the Rebbe's right hand, the other half would come off in the Rebbe's left hand. I'm not sure how successful I was at that, but something like this. Every egg has a flatter part and a pointier part. The Rebbe would dip the egg in salt water with its flatter part. But like by karpas, the Rebbe first added some salt to the salt water, and only then dipped the egg in salt water 3 times. Just like the Rebbe dipped the flat edge of the egg in salt water, he also put it into his mouth with the flat edge facing him. The Rebbe would eat the egg in 3 bites. During the meal, the Rebbe would move the matzah case to the left so that he would eat on the right side. Also his cup, the Rebbe moved forward and would be more in the middle of the table during the meal. In general, throughout the meal, the Rebbe would not start eating until everyone was served and until the waiters had sat down in their places. The Rebbe also barely spoke during Shulchan Orech. He would never start a conversation. Only if somebody asked a question, he would answer. They also wouldn't sing many nigunim. Only 1 year they sang a nigun by Shulchan Orech. During the fish course, the Rebbe would spread a lot of salt, literally a layer, over his piece of fish. Nobody really knows the reason why, but one chassid remembers that 1 year Rashag, the Rebbe's brother-in-law, asked the Rebbe why he does this, and the Rebbe said, "Sees gishmaker. It's more gishmak that way." During the fish course, the Rebbe would also have some matzah, which he would dip in salt and eat between bites of fish. Between the fish and the soup, the Rebbe would fill up his kais with about a half a cup of wine and drink it. However, because on the Seder night, we're not supposed to attach importance to any cups of wine besides for the Arba Kaisis, the Rebbe would not say l'chaim on this cup. Instead, he would just drink it. On the Seder night, the soup in the Rebbe's house was served in a very special bowl. A bowl from the times of the Alter Rebbe. Here's a picture of it, released by Rabbi Shalom Ber Levin, the librarian of the Rebbe. On the back of the bowl, you could see the numbers 1748. That means that this bowl was made when the Alter Rebbe was still a child. The Rebbe would take 3 ladles of soup into his bowl, and everybody else around the table was honored to also take soup from the bowl of the Alter Rebbe. For main course, the Rebbe was served chicken, and in many years it was accompanied by some vegetables, usually carrots. And the Rebbe would eat quickly because he wanted to make the time for eating the afikoman, which on the first night of the Seder we're supposed to eat before chatzos, before midnight. And the Rebbe was careful to do this most years, even on the second night as well. Of course, when the Rebbe stopped eating, everybody around the table stopped eating. And so those years when the Rebbe had to finish the meal early because chatzos was coming, we feel bad a little bit for the people around the table. They didn't really have a proper Sodas Yomtiv. But that was part of being at the Rebbe's Seder. We remember that after drinking the second cup, the Rebbe left some wine in the bottom of his plate. When the Rebbe's main course plates were taken away to be washed, the Rebbe would also give his kais to the waiters so they could wash it out before benching. Just before moving on to Tzafun, to actually eating the afikoman, the Rebbe would drink a little bit of water. As we remember from the beginning of the Seder, the Rebbe's afikoman was hidden in a cloth between the 2 pillows. At this point, the Rebbe would take out the cloth with the matzah and unwrap it, pull out the 5 pieces of afikoman, and eat the entire thing leaning to the left. At the first Pesach after the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe made it clear that he would like that his Hasidim should come eat the afikoman at his Seder. And so many Hasidim at this point would leave their houses, bring their afikoman with them, and join the Rebbe at his Seder to eat the afikoman together. 1 year, there were a group of Bachrim who were Zeicha that the Rebbe shared a piece of his afikoman with them. These were the Bachrim who had been on Shlichus for 2 years in Melbourne, Australia. Before benching, and even before filling up his own kais, the Rebbe would fill up the kais shel Eliyahu, the special cup that we pour for Eliyahu Hanavi. In the Rebbe's house, this was a plain, straight glass, didn't even have these decorative designs, and it was a bit smaller than this one, and it would go onto a china plate. The Rebbe once explained that the reason he always poured the kais shel Eliyahu before benching, even though the Frierdiker Rebbe sometimes did it after benching, is because the kais shel Eliyahu is connected to Mashiach. And the Rebbe said, I want Mashiach to come as early as he can, so I'll pour his cup as early as I can. Right before filling up the third cup, the Rebbe would take a napkin and dry the cup inside and outside, since it was just sent to the kitchen to wash. The Rebbe poured the third cup and held the kais, again lifting it with 2 hands and then putting it in the right hand, held it all the way until the middle of benching after the bracha of Uvinei. Then the Rebbe put it down till he finished benching, and once he was done, again he picked it up with 2 hands, left it in the left, put it to the right, made the Beirach Pri Hagafen, and then drank the third cup leaning to the left.